Night fell over Pedra Clara without haste, covering every house, road, and hill with a thick blanket of darkness. The wind was light, yet it carried a chill that didn't belong to the end of summer. High on a hill, far from the town's lights, Elias's workshop smelled of rust, grease, and old dust. The yellow glow of a single bulb swung gently from the ceiling, making the shadows of scattered tools sway across the cramped space. The ham radio sat at the center of his workbench, heavy, robust, scarred by years of use. Elias, a middle-aged man with an uneven gray beard and tired eyes, turned the tuning knob as if caressing a relic. It was an old habit, inherited from his father, who had spent countless nights searching for distant transmissions. For Elias, it wasn't just a pastime, it was a ritual, a fragile thread tying him to a man who was no longer there.
The frequency hissed, popped, and shifted in tone as he spun the dial. Here and there, a distant voice crackled through the static, fragments of music flickering in and out like ghosts. Then, something changed. Amid the chaotic noise came a sound that didn't belong. It wasn't a human voice. It wasn't music. It wasn't the erratic hiss of normal interference. It was organic. A low, irregular noise like wet clicks, punctuated by pauses too precise to be random. Elias leaned in, brows knitted. For a moment, he thought he heard words, muffled, drawn out as if spoken underwater. That's when the workshop filled with light.
Elias looked up and through the window saw the sky split by a bluish-white flash. It didn't flicker like lightning. It didn't roar like thunder. The light moved in a straight, smooth line, and for an instant seemed to slow before vanishing behind the northern hills. The air seemed to hum faintly, as if something had passed close by, too fast to stir the wind. He stayed frozen in place. The radio still hummed, but it now felt distant. A cold shiver crawled up his neck. "Meteor," he muttered to himself, but even to his own ears the word didn't sound convincing.
The next morning, the town was buzzing. At the corner coffee shop, three men argued whether the light was a military plane, a meteor, or something from out there. An elderly woman swore it lit up her whole backyard. Another man claimed it had landed right behind the hills. But when Elias looked up at the clear sky, he noticed something no one else seemed to. The constellation he always recognized wasn't the same. Small shifts, almost imperceptible, as if the stars had been rearranged. In the days that followed, subtle changes began in the forest. The birdsong vanished. The rustle of leaves became rare. At night, the air felt heavier, as if every breath demanded more effort. Those who walked the trails swore they heard strange sounds coming from two opposite directions at once, like echoes splitting in midair. Four young locals, Lucas, Rafaela, Joao, and Heitor, decided to investigate. At dawn, they entered the forest and followed a path to a clearing none of them remembered. There, the trees were burned in a perfect circle. The scent of scorched resin and charred wood clung to the air. On the ground, deep, wide grooves cut through the dirt, not footprints, but drag marks, as if something massive had crawled through, leading off into the trees. "That's not from a tractor," said Joao, crouching to touch the soil. "It's not from anything I know," Rafaela replied, scanning the silent woods. "Let's get out of here," Lucas muttered. "This feels wrong." Meanwhile, Elias's radio had begun acting on its own. At exactly 3:18 a.m., it would switch on by itself. No matter the frequency, The sound was always the same, the irregular static, now joined by murmurs, a language impossible to identify, yet rhythmic, almost like a whispered chant. Elias tried to record it, but every file ended up corrupted. On the fourth night, he decided to listen all the way through. He sat still, eyes fixed on the radio as the murmuring grew. Then he felt it, a presence. Turning toward the window, he saw a silhouette, too tall to be human, too thin with arms far too long. There was no face, just a hazy shadow where one should have been. When he blinked, it was gone. Fear began to seep into the town. Pets disappeared. Families locked their doors earlier. On some nights, lights appeared in the sky, blinking in patterns that looked like code. No one could decipher them.
Then came the blackout. On a moonless night, every light in town went out at once. No power, no signal. Flashlights refused to turn on. Phones wouldn't power up. The silence was so deep that each footstep seemed to echo. Then came a low, constant hum, like distant thunder, but with no vibration in the ground. By morning, several people were missing. Bedrooms untouched except for torn clothing left on beds and strange, circular burn marks on the sheets. No signs of struggle, no clues.
On the third night after the blackout, Elias saw the lights again, but they weren't coming from the sky. They were seeping from the ground, tracing lines and symbols across the hillside. He couldn't resist. Grabbing his camera and an old flashlight, he set out alone. The climb was long. The cold seemed to seep up from the soil itself. The closer he got, the more the air vibrated, as though some inaudible frequency were shaking his bones. When he reached the top, he stopped dead. Glowing fissures snaked through the ground, forming shapes that pulsed like living veins. Moving among them were figures, tall, thin to the point of looking skeletal, yet they moved with a fluid grace that defied human anatomy. Where faces should have been, there were blurred shadows, but the eyes were fixed points of intense light, so deep they seemed to pierce the night and lock onto something inside him. Elias felt a mental touch, like someone leafing through the pages of his life. Forgotten images flashed before him, his father's face, his first bicycle, the childhood fear of darkness. He tried to step back, but a sharp, piercing sound split the air, vibrating in his teeth and bones. He fell, his camera rolling away. Before he lost consciousness, he saw one of the figures lift its head. The eyes widened until they filled his entire vision. Elias was never seen again. Days later, a camera was found by the roadside near the forest's edge. The footage showed shaky shots of the climb, heavy breathing, darkness. The final frame froze on 2 points of light, staring directly into the lens. Then came a slow, wet, inhuman breath. To this day, they say that at the same hour each night, 2 fixed lights can be seen high on the hills, watching the town. Some claim that on old radios, faint whispers can be heard, repeating names. And maybe, one day, it will be yours.
If this story sent chills down your spine, imagine what's coming next. Don't just watch, join us. Subscribe now and be ready for the next nightmare, because they might already be here.